Hi vlog. Today I'm going to do Dawson's birth story, so stay tuned. So the reason I wanted to do this video is most people who know me don't even really know the whole story behind what happened during Dawson's birth. It might help somebody else, and I feel like it's one way that I can almost kind of cope with what happened during his birth. It was a traumatic experience. It's unlike other traumatic experiences where there's no purpose to it. It was done to you. You don't really get anything but grief out of it, because I got a baby out of it. So it's a little bit different. I don't feel resentful about it or anything like that. But it was quite difficult and to some extent traumatic. And my son is 20 months old, and I am just now getting to the point where I'm really facing it and able to think about it and really process it. So I thought it would be good to make a video about it, kind of get it off my chest, and then also maybe it would help somebody else, or maybe people are curious about what happened during his birth. So the first part that I want to talk about is the insurance that I was on. I was on an insurance called Kaiser Permanente, which anybody who knows anything about Kaiser, if you don't know, you have to see a Kaiser doctor at a Kaiser facility. So they have these big facilities with radiology, labs, doctors, all kinds of different doctors, and it says Kaiser on the building, and you go to that building and that's where you get your care. You cannot get your care from any doctor outside of a Kaiser building. Kaiser also contracts with certain hospitals, and you cannot get your care at a hospital outside of what Kaiser has contracted with. That's going to be important later in the story. But for right now, that should tell you just a little bit about them. Something else that happened when I got pregnant is I called my insurance and I said, you know, I need a list of OBs. And they said, well, let me ask you a bunch of invasive questions. And I didn't really understand why they were asking me, but they asked me a bunch of questions and I kind of got it in the middle of their asking. They were trying to determine if they were going to approve a midwife, or I'm going to move this a little bit. They were trying to decide if they were going to approve a midwife or an OB. I did not get to pick. They picked for me, and they picked a midwife. And the reason that that's a problem is my family typically does not dilate. My mom had 3 C-sections. One of my sisters was only able to dilate after an epidural, and one of my sisters had a really difficult natural delivery that was, I think, very rough on her physically, because she did not, her baby was big and all that stuff. So I already knew that about my family. I am also married to a man who is very broad, very muscular, and just kind of a big boned person. And I knew that me having a baby with him would probably mean that our baby was a little bit on the bigger side. Kaiser they would not approve an OB, for me to see an OB. So I went to a midwife, which is fine. I had always wanted to try a completely natural labor anyways. Of course, most pregnant women go into it thinking, oh, I'm gonna, this is the experience that, like, this is kind of the standard experience. I'm gonna have a vaginal birth and things like that. And that's what I thought. So I said, well, I'll just make the best of it. No big deal. So I did the midwife care during my whole pregnancy. Fast forward to I was about 8.5, 9 months pregnant. For those of you who don't know, pregnancy is actually 10 months. It's 40 weeks. And I was huge. And I don't mean I gained a lot of weight during my pregnancy everywhere else. My stomach was huge. Now I know everybody, their stomach is really big at the end. Yes, you're right. You get very big, very uncomfortable at the end. I looked like I was in pain. If you would have seen a picture, you would have been like, ooh, it was huge. It was almost like hanging there. Like my body could not deal with the size of this pregnancy. And I thought I was going to walk into the doctor's office, the midwife's office, any day, and they would be like, we probably need to do a measurement scan. And they never did. And I asked for one 4 times. I asked for a measurement scan 4 times and they refused. They would not do it. They stated that it was inaccurate and it's just a guess, and they see women all the time, even really small women give birth to big babies, and your body just knows what to do. And I'm so certain that that's true for some people, but it was not true for my baby. I knew it. Anybody who knew me knew it. Anybody who saw me knew it. It was not gonna happen. But I went into it with a good attitude, and that I wanted to try to still do the natural birth because that's what I was hearing my whole pregnancy. So I get through that last month. I'm 5 days overdue from my due date, and I finally go into the hospital, bags packed and everything, because I kind of thought I was leaking a little bit. So what I mean by that is when your water breaks, you get like a big gush basically, and you need to go to the hospital. And mine was not like that. I just kind of wasn't sure. When you're pregnant, there's a lot going on, and so I just wasn't really sure. And they told me, well, go ahead and come in. I gave birth at Overlake Hospital, and they said, go ahead and come in. So I went in, and the nurse was very sure that it was not amniotic fluid, but she was just going to do the test just to be sure. Well, it came back and it was positive, which means that it is amniotic fluid. What had happened is they call it springing a leak. How nice is that? I sprung a leak at the top, and it was just kind of like leaking out. I hope that's not TMI. It's kind of just something that happens. It's not like, I don't feel like it's gross. And so at that point, you're still at risk for an infection if you just go home and just see what happens over the next couple days, just as if you were to have your water break. So they kept me there, and they had to induce me. If you don't know what an induction is, probably everybody who's watching this does, but if you don't know, they give you drugs to jumpstart your body into labor, to force you into contracting and things like that. For some people, it works. For a lot of people, it creates a very hard scenario to give birth naturally. And it did for me for sure. So I was in unmedicated labor for 24 hours. What I mean by that is I had no pain medication for 24 hours. They wouldn't give it to me because I didn't dilate. I don't know if you remember me talking about this, but I wasn't dilating, which is exactly what happened to everybody else in my family. And for 24 hours, I labored while being induced. So Pitocin, well, first I had the thing that softens your cervix, whatever that is. Then I had that for 8 hours or 4 hours, something. Then I had Pitocin for the rest of the time. And if you don't know what that is, it makes your body contract in an unnatural way. For some people, it works out just fine, but for me, it made my contractions stacked, which meant I got no break in between. It was just a peak, so you can see the peaks on the monitor. It would peak, and it would peak, and it would peak. What's supposed to happen during normal labor is you contract, and you get a break. You contract, and you get a break. I wasn't getting breaks. And I was really done at 20 hours. So at 20 hours, I had the nurse and doctor come in, and I was like, you have to give me an epidural. Like, I can't deal. I'm in pain. I haven't slept. I'm physically, I'm done. I would like the epidural, please. Before that, I had not asked for it, not because I didn't think I could get it. I had no idea that they could refuse it to me, but because I didn't want it. I wanted to try natural. Well, at 20 hours of induced labor, they said, nope, you're not dilated enough. You're only at a 2. 2 centimeters after 20 hours. So, the nurse, the doctor at the hospital, and the anesthesiologist who were on shift at that time decided we're not going to give her an epidural. It got very heated in the room. My husband had to tell everybody to leave because I was freaking out and saying I was going to go to a different hospital. I felt very helpless, and with everything else that had happened through my pregnancy, where I didn't get to choose, where I just felt like they weren't listening to me, and I was gonna I kind of felt like we're gonna die in this hospital, like, and they're not gonna have listened to me. I'm the one in labor, and they're not listening to me. I'm telling them I'm done. I'm telling this baby is probably like over it. So what they did is they said, nope, you got to try one more thing. The balloon. You know what that is? They stick something up there and they inflate it with water, and it manually dilates your cervix. Not a big problem if you have an epidural, and really it wasn't much more painful than what I'd been through. And when you go through labor, if you've ever been through it before, you kind of know when you're going through labor, sometimes it can feel like it's not that long, because your body is going through so many changes that it kind of protects you from that labor pain by making it seem like it's not that long. I definitely didn't feel like I had been in labor for 20 hours at that point. I just felt like my body was done. So they put this balloon in, and it was painful. They made me walk around, whatever, that's fine. By the time I was done with the balloon, and I had to get to 4 centimeters. That's what the magic number they wanted me to get to, dilated. So in that time, the new doctor, the new nurse, and the new anesthesiologist came on shift. And my doula, who was wonderful, I really don't know how I would have gotten through it without her, she went and talked to them. And she said, you have to help her. Like, we've got to get it. The anesthesiologist that came in was an angel. He was so sweet. He apologized. He was like, I am so sorry that you've had to wait for this. We're going to get you some relief. It makes me want to cry just talking about it. So he comes in and he gives me the epidural. I'm probably only, he's told me, yeah, you're at 4. He checked me, or someone checked me. I don't even know. Everybody had their hands up there. Someone checked me and they were like, yeah, you're at 4. I'm pretty sure I was only at 3. So 4 more hours of having a balloon up there, and I got, 1 more centimeter. So they gave me the epidural. After the epidural was in, they broke my water, which I had a ton of amniotic fluid, which is part of the reason my stomach was so big, which is great for baby. It's fine. And baby still wasn't coming. But now baby had these stacked contractions that were still happening, but I couldn't feel them. But he could feel them. So what that started to do is it started to put him into distress. And when babies that are still in the womb are in distress, their heart rate evens out. So for us, on the adults and children and things like that, you want your heart rate to be nice and smooth. But for like fetuses, you want their heart rate to be kind of like up and down and up and down. For some reason, that's what's healthy for them. And after another 12 hours, so 24 hours I got my epidural, another 12 hours, We'd done all kinds of things. We tried to reposition. My doula had used the rebozo thing. I mean, we tried everything. And his head was, what they said is his head was not in the right position to dilate my cervix. So at 36 hours, I was only 6 centimeters dilated, and he was in distress. His heart was evening out. What happens after their heart evens out is typically it starts to decline, and you have a real problem at that point because they're not getting all the oxygen they need. Holy crap, my foot is asleep. Oh my God. Oh, it's like pins and needles. Why did I sit on my knees or my feet? Of course that's gonna happen. Oh, okay, let me stretch my legs out. Ow. So the doctor comes in, the midwife with Kaiser, who was at the hospital at that time. So they have a hospital doctor, they have a Kaiser midwife who's there with me, they have a hospital anesthesiologist and a hospital nurse. So my midwife came in and said, you know, his heart rate, I think we're gonna have to take you for a C-section. And at this point, I was thinking to myself, well, duh, of course you're gonna have to. Look what you've put us through. Like, this should have happened 12 hours ago. You should have done this at 20 hours when I was 2 centimeters dilated. Come on. But I didn't say that. I said, you know what? I think you're right. I'm ready to go. And so they got ready real fast, and it was a whirlwind. David woke up. It was like the middle of the night or very, very early morning when they told us that we'd have to do this because they'd been monitoring his heart rate out in at the station. And so they came in and they took me back for, at this point they had stopped the Pitocin. I'm sorry, I didn't mention that. They'd stopped the Pitocin a couple hours earlier because it was putting him into distress. They thought that it would. So they come in, everything happens really fast. They put David in the gown, they wheel me back, and I'm like, oh, thank God. And the anesthesiologist is doing, for those of you who don't know or who haven't had a C-section, the way that they measure if you're going to be numb for your C-section is they squirt water from a spray bottle or a squirt bottle onto you. And what they want to see is if you can feel that it's cold and if you can feel that there's liquid on you. And so if you're numb, you will not feel that it's cold for sure, and you will not feel anything. And so they spray it right there, right over your, pelvic area. So he started doing that. Mind you, I had already had an epidural. I'd already had one 12 hours before, and I still had the IV in. It had not worn off, and I could feel it. I said, I can feel it. He said, okay, we're gonna push another epidural. So he pushed another dose, not just the maintenance dose, but like a whole nother dose, like you get when you first get an epidural. A couple minutes later, can you feel this? Can you feel this? And I could not only feel that it was water, but I could feel that it was cold. That's a really bad sign. You are not supposed to feel that it's cold with that much medicine in you. So he said, okay, all right, Teresa, we're gonna do a spinal block, and this should take care of it. So at this point, like, they're kind of rushing things along because they don't want the baby to go into distress. And so he does the spinal tap, spinal block, whatever you call it. And, minute and a half, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, I don't know how long it was. It could have been 10 minutes. I have no idea. He comes over and he does it again. And I can feel the water. I can't feel that it's cold anymore, but I can feel the water. And I can feel that it's cold on the sides near my hip bones. I do remember that. And he leans down and he gets real close and he says, Teresa, we have to take this baby out. I'm going to give you some medicine to help you through this, I think is what he said. And what he meant by that is he was going to give me some medicine to separate me from the experience that I was probably going to have. And so he gave me, it's one narcotic that they give you during labor anyway. They give me that and ketamine. For those of you who don't know, ketamine is medical grade acid. or medical grade meth. I'm not sure which one. To me, it was medical grade acid. And it is supposed to give you a little bit of an out-of-body experience. The reason for that is I felt my C-section. So when you get a C-section, you always feel pressure. Anybody, even they can be totally numb and you still feel pressure. That's not what I'm talking about. I could, when they do a C-section, they cut through layers of skin and tissue, and I felt that. I was about 50% numb. So I had quite a bit of pain, and I felt the C-section. I felt them cutting the layers. I felt all of that, but it wasn't a stabbing pain. It was just pain. I don't really know how to describe it other than that. It hurt, but it wasn't like I wasn't numb. So don't think that. But what was really, really hard about it is I was on another planet. I thought the hospital bed that I was on, plane, and I was flying through the ward that I had just walked around before we went in. And my eyes were rolled back in my head. So they open me up, they take Dawson out, and I can hear him cry. But I never saw him because I was too high. I could not open my eyes. I couldn't talk. I couldn't do anything because I was just way too high from the ketamine. And so they held him right in front of my face and were like, Terry, open your eyes, open your eyes. And David was like, honey, open your eyes. He's right here. And I couldn't. My eyes were like rolled in the back of my head. But I smiled when I heard him cry. I could do that. And I turned my head towards him and smiled. And of course, David was like super freaked out. I'm not really responsive. He's got this crying baby. All of my, when you get a C-section, they like take out your intestines. They're like laid out everywhere and they stuff them back in. Sorry. And he was super freaked out. So they did skin to skin with Dawson for him and then waited for me to kind of come out of it. I also felt them put the staples in, and I'm not talking about pressure. It was painful. I could definitely feel that. But labor and natural birth is painful. So I wasn't necessarily concerned that I felt my C-section and that it was painful. It was a bit traumatic. Okay, so I'm back. My battery died. It is, can you tell? It is 10:15 at night. So what I was saying is that I was not concerned that the C-section was painful. My concern was that I could not have that moment with Dawson when he was born where I was like, oh, my baby, and I met him and he was mine, and like they put him on my chest and snuggled him in or whatever. I didn't have that, and I felt very sad that I didn't have that. I felt robbed of that experience because it was so, I couldn't even look at him. I never knew what he was like when he was born. I didn't get to snuggle him or anything. And I think that's what was traumatic, is that after all of that pain and all of that kind of like anxiety over what's going to happen at this hospital, I feel like I'm going to die here, is that I still didn't get to see him. And so after they staple me up in the operating room, David's doing skin to skin, like I said, they weigh him, all that good stuff. Thank God David got some pictures of all that. And they wheeled us back to the room. I don't know if it was 5 minutes or 30 minutes, but I finally started to come around and like gain consciousness a little bit, I guess. They had to like support me when they put Dawson in my arms because I was still kind of like loopy and out of it. And I remember just looking at him and being like, oh my gosh, he's really cute. But I didn't feel like, oh, my baby. Like I didn't have that moment that I really thought that I would have. I didn't have that with him at that moment. I just thought he was really cute. He was just a cute baby, which is great. That's fine. But I really wanted that other moment. And so, you know, I had him really early in the morning. So we get through the rest of the day. I guess my body is kind of like processing everything. I'm not able to really do a whole lot. I don't remember a lot of the first day and the first night, but the thing that sticks out to me the most, and the thing that I just loved the most, and the time when I really bonded with Dawson, and where I really felt, oh, he's mine, and he loves me, and we get to take him home, and we get to raise him. The time when that happened was the second night. So, God, I am just like hating how my hair looks. I'm sorry, guys. I'm being really self-conscious right now. I need to just shut up. But the second night, and they even have posters about it in the hospital. It's hilarious. But they say, like, second night, get ready for it. Like, it's kind of rough. Because the babies will cluster feed on their second night to stimulate your milk supply, and so they're up a lot, and you already probably didn't get sleep the first night, and it's the second night in the hospital, blah blah blah. So they warn you about it, and you know, nurses will talk to you about it and stuff like that, or our hospital did. But the second night was magic. It was so sweet. He would cry, and David would get up and change him. Obviously I couldn't get out of bed because I just had a C-section. So he gets out of bed, he changes him. Dawson's like wailing, you know, just like inconsolable. And as soon as David gets about this far away from me, he just stops. He stops crying completely. He didn't even have to be touching me. He wasn't getting milk, he wasn't getting snuggled, nothing. David was just putting him over near me, and he could smell me. And he just stopped crying. And that's when I really felt like, oh my gosh, he loves me. Like, he needs me. He's mine. Like, this is great. I mean, sorry, David. That kind of sucks for you, but like, this is amazing. And he would just snuggle in, and he would nuzzle in my neck, and he would nurse. And then I'd lay him down right next to me, and he would just fall back asleep. But if David tried to pick him up and put him back in the bassinet, he'd wake up and he'd scream and cry, and then he'd come back to me, which is natural. That's what babies are supposed to do. You know, they're supposed to elicit responses from their parents to keep them close, and that's one way that they do it. But it was just so special, and that was the night that I felt like it solidified that bond. Like, okay, we're good. We got it. We're here. And I feel very connected to Dawson. I've always kind of like known what he wants when he wants it. We came home from the hospital, and he would start to cry, and David would be like, what do you think he wants? And it wasn't like, oh, I think he needs to be fed or changed. It was like, oh, you know what? He's tired. Let's swaddle him. And he'd go, you know, that fixed it. I think he wants a swing right now. Or, no, I need to nurse him right now. Yeah, that's what he wants. Even if it had only been an hour. Like, it was like every single time something happened with him, I just knew somehow. And it was amazing. I love that feeling of just like knowing your baby and being connected with them. And it's very special. But one thing that I did not mention when I was talking about the anesthesiologist is, you guys, I don't know if you think that I'm lying or whatever, but I don't react the same way as other people do to pain medication. And I definitely don't react the way you think that I'm going to react based on my size. And just like every other doctor, I mean, they can't, like, you know, dose you up just because you say that. And that's what happened. It's not that necessarily I didn't get enough, but I don't react to narcotics and pain blockers the way that other people do. In fact, they don't really do anything for me. And I think that was part of the reason that I had a problem. But, and I don't know, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but the anesthesiologist sat right there next to my ear, and he told me, okay, Terry, they're about to take him out. Okay, can you hold on for just a little bit longer? He's almost here, Terry. Okay, they just pulled him out. Oh, he's a big boy. Oh, wow, he's a big boy. Oh, he's doing so good. Oh, he's crying. Look, he's crying. And so he's the anesthesiologist. He understands how ketamine affects people. And I needed someone right there, like, narrating it. I wasn't with it enough to connect the dots, really. The only thing I was able to do was, like, he's crying, which means he's alive. That's it. Everything else I was just way too out of it for. But he was telling me everything, and so I was like internalizing that and understanding what was happening to me and what was happening with my baby, and that was a huge blessing. I have a heart for that man. Not only did he give me my epidural, but he just walked me through everything. He was absolutely lovely. But I think that's my whole birth story. Thank you for staying with me. I'm sorry that it's like nighttime and, you know, the lighting is terrible and all that stuff, but hopefully the next video, I do want to do other sit downs. So I'm thinking that the next one will be possibly about like why I chose to stay home from work, like why I'm a stay-at-home mom. Or about breastfeeding, because that was a huge struggle for me. Very rewarding, but extremely challenging. Hopefully I'm doing a live pregnancy test for you guys. Obviously it won't be like live. I mean, I've got to, like, you know, tell family and friends and stuff like that, but hopefully that will be coming soon. I hope I get pregnant in the next little while, so we'll see. Thank you for sticking around. Please hit that subscribe button and that like button, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.